Your top stories this evening sponsored by Courts, bringing value home. Child sexual abuse remains a hidden crime, says CPA head Anne Green. Rape of 13-year-old, autopsy inconclusive, duo for court on Wednesday. Oil revenue could double government's budget even with low oil prices, says attorney Nigel Hughes. And DAS removed from CID headquarters, now second in charge of operations. HGP Nightly News begins now. Good evening to our viewers here in Guyana and online. I'm Travis Chase with the Tuesday, September 26 edition of the HGP Nightly News. Here's what you need to know this evening. Child abuse reports continue to climb this year, but cases of sexual abuse very often elude authorities. Kristen Macklingam opens our broadcast this evening.
Preventing child abuse and bringing justice to victims remain in the forefront of the agenda of the Child Care and Protection Agency. But reports continue to roll in about the abuse of minors throughout the country, says Director of the Child Care and Protection Agency, Miss Anne Green.
Ms. Green, can you give me an update on the number of cases that the Child Protection Agency has received with regards to children being abused?
Yes. For the year, in terms of sexual abuse, 424 children reports that we have responded to for sexual abuse. And we're 200 plus, 2,000 and something plus children have been abused for the year. And out of that, 424 sexual abuse.
Ms. Green speaking exclusively with Nightly News about reports of child abuse for 2017. She lamented that with regard to perpetrators of child sexual abuse being put away, the process is very slow, but that the CPA continues to do what it can to ensure that justice is served and children are kept safe.
It's not 424 and say the perpetrators, all the police would have able to get them, not as yet. Some are still being investigated. Some of the perpetrators are not known, or the children are not really saying who the perpetrators are.
Ms. Green added that sexual abuse continues to be a hidden crime in many communities, and because of the secrecy about such acts, children are the ones left suffering after being violated.
Most times they're threatened that you have to stay quiet, silent about it. It's our little secret. If you talk, things will happen to the family, things will happen to mommy and that. So children will stay silent, will suffer in silence.
Reporting for HGP Nightly News, I am Kristen Macklingam.
Thank you, Kristen. Founding member of the Guyana Oil and Gas Association, Mr. Nigel Hughes, says no Guyanese should be living in poverty when oil revenues start to flow. In a presentation on Monday, Mr. Hughes said that even when oil prices are low, the commodity has the potential to double the government's current budget of US $1.2 billion. Rodin James reports.
Mr. Hughes envisages Guyana is on the cusp of development that is rarely seen around the world. He is advocating the adaptation of a careful plan and strategy by government regarding the course of action the administration will take with the revenue garnered from the oil and gas, adding that 30 years down the line, when the wells are dry, the country must look back and be proud of what it has achieved from its oil resources.
For Guyana, the question is, how do we make our oil into an economic lubricant and not a combustible substance? Oil must be seen as a catalyst allowing the government to achieve the sustainable development goals and the private sector to contribute to economic growth. Key for Guyana is the need for the private sector to be an engine of growth and for the oil income to be translated into a number of vibrant new sectors. The state cannot do this.
He posited that while government can create an enabling environment, it is the private sector that has to create the lion's share of jobs and, by extension, growth.
With production schedule for 2020, we are probably 2 years behind where we should be in our preparation for the new industry. The government has provided a general broad framework for the development of a green economy, but without too many specifics. With this relatively untouched canvas, the private sector must chart a course which will deliver the returns and create the value for the country and itself.
Mr. Hughes says now that Guyana knows where it is headed in a few years' time, the journey must commence with where the country is and what is possible in the short and long term.
There are a few critical elements of a stable, long-term, sustainable development which we should also consider to be included. Growth, which is inclusional. No region or section of society must be left behind. That is the sustainable development goal number 1, zero poverty. 2, power to the people. Economic studies have shown the transformative impact that cheap power has on all the lives of the citizens of a country, particularly the poor.
It is estimated that $380 million will be added to the country's coffers within the first 3 years of production. And even with low oil prices, Mr. Hughes predicts that the government's budget could be doubled by 2025 with the inflow of oil revenues. Roy and James, HGP Nightly News.
You're watching the HGP Nightly News. The 2 men allegedly responsible for the murder of a 13-year-old Berbice resident will face the courts on Wednesday, even though an autopsy report has not fully determined the actual cause of death. Jevon Vickery reports.
It has been confirmed by sources close to the investigations that after more than 72 hours, the 2 men accused of murdering 13-year-old Leonard Archibald will appear in court Wednesday morning. The police confirmed that an autopsy performed on the body of Archibald was inconclusive, but charges were recommended to be instituted by the Director of Public Prosecutions. Speaking to Nightly News on the issue, Director of the Child Care and Protection Agency Anne Green expressed that it was appalling that even though there were reports of screams coming from the house where the incident allegedly happened, no one offered to help.
Community need to do a whole lot more. This whole question of protection, it starts with the family and then the community. Good. One person might hear it and saying, I can't do anything, but community in numbers, their strength. And if there's a predator in the community, that person should have been identified, monitored, and even pushed to the criminal justice system.
The director also spoke about several media reports which indicated that one of the accused men had been identified in several other cases of rape in the area.
Pushing the person towards the criminal justice system could get help for the predators because they obviously got some issues. And then yes, and they put in the criminal justice system, so they could have been in there, and this child would have been saved. But just the community just ignore it. No, I'm appealing to communities. If you know of a predator in your community, you best identify them. The community, you watch out for children, and yes, push that to the justice system.
When contacted on Monday, Acting Crime Chief Paul Williams explained that permission was granted for an extension to further hold the men, as investigators needed additional time to further question them. Jevon Vickery, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Jevon. Probation officers attached to the Ministry of Social Protection are beckoning society to desist from the tradition underlined by the saying, I'm minding my own business. They are advocating the reporting of the slightest form of child abuse. More from Ayana George.
When I read about that case in the newspaper, I actually think I saw it on Facebook. It really hurt me. It really hurt me, especially when I read the part about neighbors saying or people saying they heard a child screaming. I mean, how you could hear a child screaming and not go out?
That was Tanis Boston, senior probation officer within the Ministry of Social Protection, speaking on the rape and killing of 13-year-old Berbice schoolboy Leonard Archibald. Boston spoke out about the culture of silence adopted by some Guyanese who turn a blind eye to child abuse.
Sometimes people like say, no, you're fast. But when you're dealing with a child's life, you have to be fast. You have to be curious, because I basically believe that a village raises a child and a village can fail a child, right? And if you could respond positively, you save that child, you save that family, you save your community.
She stressed that there is little the government can do to protect children who are exposed and vulnerable to any form of abuse, adding that the public must play its role to bring about change.
The agency is working along, collaborating with communities. We set up watch groups in communities, and we're basically asking them to keep an eye out, play a positive role, assist. We're not there 24 hours. A child protection officer is not physically everywhere. And if you do your part, we'll do our part too.
September 24th to 30th is Child Protection Week. The Ministry of Social Protection is strongly urging the public to give a listening ear and be informative to protect the country's minors. Reporting for HGP Nightly News, Ayana George.
Thank you, Ayana. The police in C Division are urging a wanted man to turn himself in. Commander of that division, Calvin Brutus, says the suspect is still in Guyana. More from Javon Vickery.
Since June this year, wanted man Troy Tashau has eluded the police in C Division. But investigators on the case are of the opinion that Tashau has not left the jurisdiction. In an interview with Nightly News, Commander of C Division Calvin Brutus explained that the murder of 45-year-old Roy Beckles remain one of the two cases that are so far unsolved. The commander is of the belief that Tashau's evasiveness is aided by either close associates or relatives. He further reminded of the implications of harboring a wanted fugitive. He wants Tashau to turn himself in.
He's continued to elude us so far. The wanted bulletin is still out, and we would urge family members and so on, it's a crime, to give him residency, because once the wanted bulletin is out, he's a wanted person, he's a fugitive from the law. Harboring him is a crime. And I would urge you, if you're not bold enough to bring him in, or you don't have that influence over him to get him to come to the station, then give us the information so that we can arrest him and have justice served.
Based on information received, the deceased man had been hired by the wanted man, his neighbor, to do some work. However, an argument ensued between the two, reportedly over payment for work done. Commander Brutus further noted that as it pertains to outstanding cases within the division, the search for those suspects have intensified with increased help from members of the public.
We did an analysis. We've had some suspects named. We've had some persons of interest that we need to question. We did some operations here and there. We had some successes, but the others get wind of it and they fled the jurisdiction.
Javon Vickery, HGP Nightly News.
Still with the police, Assistant Police Commissioner Clifton Hicken gets more help in the Operations Department of the Guyana Police Force, with former Deputy Crime Chief Rishi Das joining his team. Here's more. Weeks after he wrote to Acting Police Commissioner David Ramnarine and Crime Chief Wendell Blanham requesting to be removed from the office of Deputy Crime Chief, Rishi Das's request has been granted. The former Deputy Crime Chief is now second in charge of the Guyana Police Force's Operations Unit. Assistant Police Commissioner Clifton Hicken is supervising him. Das had requested to be removed from the Criminal Investigations Department days after the Commission of Inquiry into the alleged plot to assassinate the President had wrapped up its work. To date, there has been no word as to why Mr. Das requested to be removed. What is known is that the Commission of Inquiry has recommended that Mr. Das be removed from the Office of Crime Chief and that he should be disciplined for neglect of duty for failing to ensure that the correct date on the allegation made by Andrew Gillard was stated in the report that he, Das, submitted to the Commissioner. The Commission also said that Mr. Das's efficacy in the CID is also questionable. Assistant Police Commissioner Paul Williams is the acting crime chief, while Superintendent Michael Kingston is the acting deputy crime chief. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News. Too many folks depend solely on the public service to earn an income that will support their lifestyles. However, the administration is urging that more persons seek to become entrepreneurs. Kristen Macklingam reports.
Guyanese are being urged to be less dependent on the government for jobs and to be the molders of their own destinies. Thousands of qualified applicants often seek jobs in the public sector, but frequently complain about the salaries, says Minister of Finance Winston Jordan.
Well, when they get a job, even if they find a way able to get a job, as soon as they get a job, they say salary too low. But you don't know that already. You don't have to wait to get the job to find the salary too low. You already know that already, And I said, we have this fixation of thinking that the job that we do must do everything for us. What do you call it? It must mine us, so to speak. So it must be able to pay us rent, shopping, entertainment, buy a car, or pay the car thing, the mortgage and everything.
Minister Jordan reminded that in other societies, some much more economically advanced than Guyana, most individuals have 2 jobs to cater for their expenses and advance their standards of living. He thinks that Guyanese must seriously consider this.
But I don't know where we are weaned on to this thing that says, I must get a job based on my needs. And no, a job that pays me based on my needs. It's not going to happen. You already know the job pays X amount. If it can do for you, then become masters and mistresses of your own destiny. Try to build a career where you are the boss.
According to the finance minister, as much as possible, Guyanese should try to become masters of their own destinies, and this means becoming entrepreneurs. In this way, persons can get maximum value for their skills and talents, he added. Reporting for HGP Nightly News, I am Kristen Macklingham.
Thanks for staying true to the HGP Nightly News. It's not a tsunami coming. Prime Minister Moses Nagamootoo is urging persons to move away from the pessimistic view about what the influx of oil and gas resources should mean for Guyana. Stay positive about it, he advises. Rodin James reports.
The Prime Minister says the government fully understands the challenges that accompanies the oil and gas sector, but that does not mean that the government should exert all its energies managing those challenges or what people perceive to be challenges of the sector. Addressing a private sector forum on Monday, the Prime Minister urged the organizations and individuals to have a positive outlook regarding the resources from oil.
But I want to underline that at no stage in our expectation do we have a pessimistic or narcissistic view that the resources from oil and gas will not help our country.
Mr. Nagamootoo recalled attending forums where the legal and ethical framework, the regard for transparency and accountability, and the arrangements which the government have entered into were discussed. The Dutch disease and the resource curse were raised at all of those forums, he said, but he does not share the fears outlined.
And I sometimes get the impression that we should be shouting that the tsunami is coming. And that's not what I feel our oil and gas resources should mean for Guyana, a spectre of fair. It has to be a window, a bright window, a great big sunlight of opportunities.
The Prime Minister said that oil and gas must and will hold an important place in Guyanese life.
So we look forward to oil and gas with optimism, but we also understand and we need to be educated constantly by those who have the experience, like the gentleman I met from Malaysia, how they're able to strike the balance in their GDP and not have total dependence on oil and gas.
Royden James, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Royden. Concerns continue to be raised about contractors outside of regions being awarded contracts for community development projects, but government says that interested locals must make proper representation of their skills to get jobs with those contractors. Kristen Macklingham reports.
Although each community may have skilled workers capable of executing projects, there must be proper representation to large-scale contractors who bring in workers from other regions. That's according to Minister of Finance Winston Jordan.
It is hard to see X company won a contract to build a school in Linden. That company doesn't reside in Linden. No problem. Except that X company is bringing all the labor force from outside of Linden. And uncaringly and unfeelingly executing this project with little or no regard for the skills that you may have here.
Minister Jordan during a recent ministerial outreach in Region 10. The finance minister says residents who are interested in being a part of the projects need to ensure that contractors know that the required skills reside in their communities.
So you got to also appreciate that in winning contracts, it calls for all kinds of different skill set and discipline. So we just can't only be perturbed that people are coming out of the region bringing their skills. We also have to be sure that not only do we have the skills here, but we can depend on those skills, that those skills are disciplined.
Minister Jordan emphasized that if large-scale contractors are not assured that workers in the communities are reliable and committed, they will not risk employing them, but will opt to employ workers from other communities with whom these contractors had previously shared successful working relationships.
Look at those certain set of people. Look how they work. Look how long they work. And look at the times they work. Remember just now I was talking about people who work even on holidays? How many people here are willing to work on a holiday? Not the nurses and so on. They know they have to work. How many people are willing to work on a holiday to make certain that the road gets fixed or the building comes in on time? I'm sure not many people.
Reporting for HGP Nightly News, I am Kristen Macklingham.
Your sportscast is ahead. Thank you for staying tuned. I'm Colin Abrams with the HGP Sports. In hockey, the annual GTT National Indoor Hockey Championships began Monday evening at the Cliff Anderson Sports Hall, where National Black-trounced Pepsi Hikers in the men's divisions, National Ladies dominated SIDM in the women's division, and GCC Vintage overshadowed Old Fort Goal Setters in the veterans division. Stanford Howard has the details.
In the women's division, Pizza Hut GCC began their 2017 quest to retain the title in dominant fashion, as Sonia Jardine and Karina Muller both scored hat-tricks in their 8-1 beating of Old Fort Shooting Stars. Bushani Kaldeen was the noticeable standout for Old Forts, although she only managed 1 goal for her team, through a counter-attack in the 5th minute. Captain Tiffany Solomon and Sandy Rupner-Ryan scored the other 2 goals for GCC. Results in the other women's match in the division saw National Ladies defeating SIDM 11-0. The men's first division competition produced a thrilling battle between Old Forts Titan and Bounty GCC, as the two fought to a 5-5 stalemate in the end. Old Fort led from the start, going up by 2 field goals from Jeline Gaskin in the first 12 minutes. GCC Alan Fernandez replied 2 minutes later, but Akeem Hope restored Old Fort's 2-goal cushion in the 15th minute. GCC midfielder Orlando Semple managed to draw his team within 1 for the lead. The game seemed surely beyond GCC 5 minutes into the second half, as Old Forts hammered home 2 goals through Askofko Simmons and John Abrams to give Old Forts a 5-2 lead. The change tactics by GCC produced the opportunities they needed, as Dwayne Scott, Mark Sargent and Peter DeGroot each found the back of the net, with DeGroot's equalizer coming the penultimate minute of the match to draw 5-5. Other results for the night saw National Black defeated Pepsi Hikers 12-0. National Green defeated Saints 9-1. In the Veterans Division, GCC Vintage saw Old Fort Goal Getters off 10-5. In the men's second division, Old Fort Warriors defeated Hikers 5-1. For HGP Sportscast, I'm Stanford Howard.
Thank you, Stanford. In cricket, Ghana to send a T20 team to Antigua for the second annual ABCA Independence Tri-20 Tournament 2017, which commences on October 6th and runs through October 14. More in this report.
The Ghana team will be joining Antigua and Jamaica in battle for the 2017 T20 trophy. The team consists of a mixture of contracted franchise and academy players, along with other senior players, and will be led by Leon Johnson, captain, and Versami Permal, vice-captain. The players are Robin Bacchus, Gajnan Singh, Leon Johnson, Chandrapal Hemraj, Jonathan Fu, Anthony Bramble, Kimo Paul, Sheffron Rutherford, Versami Permal, Stephen Jacobs, Ronsford Beaton, Romario Shepherd, Ricardo Adams, Christopher Barnwell, and Ramal Lewis.
More cricket news. England's Stokes out of 4th ODI after he was arrested in Bristol.
The England-Wales Cricket Board has announced that England all-rounder Ben Stokes was arrested early Monday after an incident in Bristol, and he will miss the fourth one-day international against West Indies on Wednesday. The board said in a statement that he was held overnight and released under investigation without charge late on Monday and will join the team in London. Opener Alex Hales, who was with Stokes on Sunday night, will also miss Wednesday's match at the Oval. The ECB said he had returned voluntarily to the city in the west of England to help police with the inquiries. In basketball, Coles pinched Sonics, Pacesetters grip Eagles, and Coles beat Cobras in their second semifinals game on Sunday as the Georgetown Amateur Basketball Association Powerade Multi-Supreme Rainforest Water First, Second, and Under-23 leagues continued at the Burnham Hart Court. Stanford Howard has more in this report.
It was a low-scoring encounter between the Colts and Sonics in their second division matchup in the second set of semifinals Sunday night. Colts won 61-59. Sonics led in the third quarter with a narrow margin of just 1 point. But it was in the final quarter that Colts squeezed past Sonics for the win. Top scorer was Alex Murray with 31 points. In the second matchup, Pacesetters glide past Eagles from jump ball. Eagles led by the first half, which ended 33-39. But Pacesetters muscled their way in the last half of the game for the 91-85 win. Top scorer for Pacesetters was Shamar Huntley with 24 points. Patrick Agrippa chipped in with 19 and Captain Kwesi Thomas 14. In the final game of Sunday night semifinals, the first division match between Colts and Cobras saw Colts trailing in the first half 31-40. But Colts regrouped after the break to clear the deficit and take the lead. They continued into the fourth for the win 90-79. Top scorer for Colts was Dave Causeway with 21 points and Sheldon Thomas 19 points. For HGP Sports, I'm Stanford Howard.
Thank you, Stanford. And finally in football, the Ghana Football Federation received a referee electronic substitution board from Massey Ghana Group of Companies last Thursday to advance the work of referees in Guyana. More in this report. The presentation was made at the company's headquarters, Runville, Georgetown, by Dio Prasad, chairman of the Massey Group of Companies, to Dion Innes, Ghana Football Federation's executive committee member and chairman of the National Football Referees Council. Innes noted that the company has always been repetitive to the football fraternity and is not a first-time partner. He expressed elation at being able to use the MoneyGram brand and the very important piece of equipment in football, which appears simple but displays information relevant to spectators and players alike. The Massey Group representative added his company was happy to assist sports in a whole, and in this case, football in particular. He said the MoneyGram Group continues to support and give back to the community, and it's part of Massey's corporate philosophy to give back. Head of the referees department of the Ghana Football Federation, Stanley Lancaster, said, "This is by far the most modernized board that we'll use compared to the others we've had. We've had many manual boards, so we welcome this. Every time we make a substitution, the brand will be visible." And that has brought us to the end of this edition of the HGP Sportscast. Back to you, Travis.
Child sexual abuse remains a hidden crime, says CPA Head and Green. Rape of 13-year-old autopsy inconclusive, duo for court on Wednesday. All revenue could double government's budget even with low oil prices, says attorney Nigel Hughes. And Das removed from CID headquarters, now second in charge of operations. Those were our major headlines. For these stories and more, please go to our website. It's www.hgptv.com. I'm Travis Chase. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.